Have you ever wondered what it would take to really push someone over the edge? Not a soldier or a spy, but like a librarian? Well, today we're diving into what happens when seemingly normal professionals, dentists, entertainers, even monks, finally snap. And let me tell you, these stories are absolutely wild.
So let's start with that librarian. Picture it. 12th century Byzantium. This quiet, bookish guy finds out the governor stole his most valuable manuscript. Now you'd think he'd, file a complaint, right? Nope. He orchestrates this brilliant, systematic takedown of the entire government from the inside out. And that is the kind of breaking point we're talking about today.
That's right. This is all about historical figures from jobs you'd never expect. We're talking about people who, when pushed way, way too far, unleashed a capacity for violence that is just, frankly, shocking. Okay, so first up, we have one of the most incredible stories I have ever heard. Let's talk about a dentist who completely redefined the meaning of a routine checkup.
So on one hand, you have Ben Salomon, a graduate of USC Dental School. His job was to tell people to rinse and spit. But on the other hand, you have Ben Salomon, the crack shot, credited with 98 enemy kills in a single day. So how in the world does a dentist become a destroyer?
Well, the year is 1944. We're on the island of Saipan, right in the middle of a massive invasion. Salomon, realizing there wasn't a whole lot of dental work that needed doing, volunteers to work at a frontline aid station. And when I say frontline, I mean it. He was just 50 yards from the action. This is where everything changes. The Japanese forces, in a last-ditch effort, launch a massive, desperate suicide mission, a banzai charge. The lines are broken and the aid tent is completely overrun. And then comes the moment. Salomon sees an enemy soldier bayonet one of his wounded patients, right there in the tent. And in that instant, something inside him just snaps. The dentist is gone, he grabs a rifle, yells at his medics to get the wounded out, and prepares to hold the line, all by himself. When American reinforcements finally fought their way back to his position, the scene they found was just unbelievable. In front of his machine gun post lay 98 enemy soldiers. He had single-handedly stopped an entire advance. And this number? 76. That's how many bullet holes they found in his body. He fought until he literally could not fight anymore. It just goes to show you, heroes can come from the most unexpected places. All right, our next story also deals with a man pushed to his absolute limit. But this time, it's not about the heat of battle, it's about honor. We're heading to 17th century England to meet a man who was just completely fed up with being the punchline. Meet Geoffrey Hudson. Now, his career at court literally started as a joke. He was served to the Queen inside of a pie. He was treated as one of her collection of oddities. But Hudson refused to be a novelty. He went on to earn the title Captain of the Horse during the English Civil War, and he demanded the respect that came with it. I mean, you can imagine, right? After years of being treated like a prop, he was just done. That title, Captain, that wasn't a joke to him. It was his identity. It was his claim to the dignity that the world seemed so determined to deny him. But of course, there's always one guy who doesn't get the memo. A nobleman named Charles Crofts thought it would be absolutely hilarious to mock Captain Hudson in public. And to top it off, he challenged him to a duel, assuming the whole thing would be one big, humiliating prank. And this is where the joke turns deadly serious. Crofts shows up to the duel armed with a squirt gun. He was expecting a huge laugh. Hudson, on the other hand, showed up with a real, custom-made pistol, fully prepared to defend his honor. And, well, the result was pretty definitive. Hudson, with deadly seriousness, shot Crofts right in the forehead, killing him instantly. The crowd, which had gathered expecting a comedy show, was shocked into silence. Geoffrey Hudson had made his point. Loud and clear. Okay, for our final story, we're going to travel to feudal Japan to meet maybe the greatest wingman in all of history, the legendary warrior monk Benkei. Now, when you hear Buddhist monk, you're probably thinking peace, meditation, vows of nonviolence. Benkei was a little different. For starters, he was 6'6", an absolute giant for the time, and a battle-hardened warrior. He was on a personal quest to defeat 1,000 samurai and take their swords. So he collects 999 swords, and then he's finally beaten by a much smaller samurai. But instead of getting angry, Benkei was humbled. He felt this immense respect for the man who bested him and swore his undying loyalty. And that loyalty would define him right up to his very last breath. Years later, their enemies are closing in. Benkei and his lord are cornered. So, to give his master time to perform an honorable ritual suicide, Benkei stands alone on a bridge, ready to face an entire army that outnumbered his side 5-1. According to the legend, he cut down 300 soldiers, all by himself. He was a one-man wall, a literal force of nature fueled by nothing but pure loyalty. The enemy soldiers were so terrified of him, they were afraid to even get close. They just stood back and rained arrows down on him. But still, he didn't fall. When they finally worked up the courage to creep forward, they realized he was already dead. He had died on his feet, his body locked in one final defiant stance, a fortress of loyalty to the very end.
So, what do we take away from all this? What's the common thread between a dentist, a court entertainer, and a warrior monk who all went completely berserk?
Well, a few big things stand out. First, underestimating people is just a terrible idea, always. A person's job doesn't define what they're capable of, whether it's courage or violence. And maybe the biggest lesson of all is that everyone, and I mean everyone, has a breaking point. You push someone far enough, you might just find out who they really are. History is absolutely full of proof.
And that really brings us to the final thought here. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? Take a look around you. Who in your life, that quiet person at work, the friendly barista you see every morning, that soft-spoken librarian, who are you completely and maybe dangerously underestimating?